Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are studying Jeremiah 6a, that's Yirmiyahu, the prophet, the first half of chapter 6. This is Saul Weinreb, the host of the podcast. We just completed, of course, chapter 5. We finished it on the question that the prophet posed to the people, which was, Mata asul achri. So what are you going to do? What are you, the people, going to do to fix this? What are you going to do to change this decree? I just told you about this terrible, terrible destruction that's coming. What are you going to do about it? Unfortunately, the prophet knew that the likelihood of the people changing was very low, and we see this repeatedly. He's constantly lamenting the fact that no one listens, no one cares, and that because of that, the destruction is going to come. But then he also constantly flips back to please, please, please listen. He never totally gives up, even though he realizes that the chances of the people turning around at this stage are close to zero, but not quite zero. After he ends with that question, Mata asul, so what are you going to do about it? And he realizes that they're not going to do anything about it. He then goes back in chapter 6 to predicting the destruction that's coming because the people don't listen. So therefore we start verse 1 with the image of people not repenting, not changing their ways, not learning how to be honest and good and just and righteous, but rather people that are preparing for an inevitable war of destruction that's oncoming. So, let's start for verse 1. Ha'izu b'nei Binyamin. O children of Binyamin, remember the people of Binyamin, Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, was part of the southern kingdom. They were allies of Judah, so they were part of the Judean kingdom, and portions of Jerusalem were actually within the tribe of Benjamin's inheritance property. So there were Benjaminites living in Jerusalem. So he turns to the people of Benjamin and he says, "Flee, run from the inside Jerusalem, from the inside the city. The city is going to be attacked. Run out, get out of there." Uvitkoa, and in the city of Tekoa, Tiku Shofar. Tekoa is a city in the Judean desert, and the name Tekoa is, of course, very similar to the word tik'u, which means to blow a horn, tik'u shofar. So it's just a play on words here, and he's saying, in the town of Tekoa, blow the horn of warning. This is the horn, the air raid siren, so to speak. They're coming. The Beit HaKerem, and in the place of Beit HaKerem, which is a town near Jerusalem, which means that place of the vineyard, it was kind of in a valley. It was very it was more fertile, and there were vineyards there, so the city was called the Beit HaKerem. Su'umash es, raise a signal fire. In other words, warn people of the enemy coming. Kira. Why? What do you need to warn everyone about? Kira. Evil is coming, is appearing. Nishkefa means we can see evil coming from the north. V'shever gadol, and a great catastrophe is about to happen. Hanova v'hamu'unaga. This is verse 2. Damisi vastion. I used to compare. This word domisi could mean destroy. I'm going to go with compare, which is how the Metsudos translates it. I compared the daughter of Zion to a beautiful and delicate and a woman. This I believe here is really meant as more of a criticism than a compliment. If you remember back in chapter 4, verse 30, we had Yirmiyahu tell us, I've heard the sound of illness coming from Jerusalem. And what did she do? And again, verse 30, this is back in chapter 4. What are you doing? Matasi, what are you doing? Kitilba shishoni, you're getting dressed up in fancy clothes. and putting on makeup and dressing yourself. There's a disaster coming. What are you doing? This, I think that's what it's referring to here. We also saw in chapter 5, verse 28, Shamnu ashtu, you fattened yourselves and so on. In other words, instead of being involved in the things that you need to prevent catastrophe, you're completely ignoring it and involving yourselves in unaga and tanug and pleasures and vanity. And therefore, verse 3, the shepherds and their flocks are going to come to you. I'm going to translate who are these shepherds and flocks. I'm going to talk about that in a second. They are blowing horns of warning against you. Ohalim saviv, they are setting their tents around you. Ra'u ish es yado, each person is preparing themselves and taking up their positions around the city of Jerusalem. Rashi and the Radak understand these shepherds to be the enemies, and the reason why they're being compared to flocks and shepherds is because there's large numbers and they gather around the city. The Mitzudos understands that they are being compared to shepherds. He doesn't say numbers wise, but he says being compared to shepherds because they are lowly like shepherds. They are people of generally in the popular mind, a shepherd is a lower class, more base, less intellectual kind of person. Then that's how the Mitzudos understands this. I was trying to come up with a better understanding of this because one usually thinks of shepherds and flocks as something more peaceful. So one idea I thought maybe it's referring to what will be after the destruction, that the city will be destroyed and it will become a field of shepherds, but that doesn't fit well into the context here. So I actually saw a much better understanding is that they're being compared to shepherds because of the ease of the conquering. The conquering will be so easy for them to conquer Jerusalem that they're like, that's why we're comparing them to shepherds. Yeah, they're a powerful nation. We did say that before, of course. The Goy Eson, we said last part, they're a powerful nation. But they could just as well have been shepherds. And once God had decreed the suffer, and that's why. So it's kind of like Rashi and Radak understanding them to being the numbers of enemies attacking, but they're being compared to shepherds because that's all they need to be in order to conquer Jerusalem at this time, at her time of terrible weakness. What do they say? Verse 4, Kadshu aleha milchama, prepare war against her. Kumu v'na'aleh b'tzahorayim, let's get up and go up there in the afternoon. And then they'll say, "Oh, Ilana Kifonim, oh no, we're in the middle of destroying. The day is almost over. We're running out of time. Let's keep going." As the evening comes, and usually that's the time when the fighting kind of stops, but they're being so successful, they want to keep going. So Kunu balayla, they say in verse 5. Let's get up and continue doing this even in the dark, even at night. V'nashchisa armnoseh, and let us destroy the fortresses that are in Jerusalem. Well, let's just keep on going. This is again referring to the we don't want to lose any time. We're being so successful. Let's just keep going and going and going. So we move on to verse 6. Kicho Omar Adonai Tzvaos, because so says God. So here, this is God speaking. Kirsu Eitzah. This is these are imagining the destroyers now, and they're saying we're destroying and we're going to lose no time in destroying because God has told us this. They are acting as if they are messengers of God. We've seen this in several places. We saw this regarding Assyria in Isaiah, that they were the messengers, that they consider themselves to be the messengers of God to destroy Jerusalem. Kirsu Eitzah, let us cut down her trees, which is, of course, something that an attacking army would do to destroy the wood and the fruit, which was a source of sustenance and supplies for the city. V'shifchu al Yerushalayim solo, let's pour down a siege ramp, and the shifchu, in other words, pour down the dirt so that we can build a ramp, so we can climb over the walls of Jerusalem. He ha'ir hafgad, this is the city which is set aside for punishment. Kula oshek bikirba. There is so much oshek, so much. I saw a translation of fraud and corruption within her. So we receive this message from God. We will therefore go ahead and fulfill his desire to destroy the city. How bad is the city? God says. This could either be the people speaking, or it could be God speaking, or it could be the prophet speaking, for that matter. Kihakir bayir meimeha, as a well, as a spring, is a source, is a makar, is a source, and it keeps on being a source for her water. So in other words, the spring is constantly filling with new water. In the similar way, the evil of the city has become like a source of evil. Hamas vashod. Hamas is oppression, where people use the system, so to speak, to take things away from the other, use their strength and power in society or physical power to take things away from others. The city is full of Hamas vashod, and people plundering one another. Yisham Abba. This is all we hear among them. It's people taking advantage of each other. Al ponai tamid. This, I'm sorry, I said before, this could be anyone speaking. I made a mistake. This is God speaking. Al ponai tamid. This is before me constantly. I constantly see this, and all I see is choli umaka, sickness and illness, meaning sickness of society, maka, and people striking each other with wounds. And then verse 8, Hivasri, this is God still speaking here. Hivasri Yerushalayim. Some also interpret this as now flipping to the prophet speaking. Hivasri Yerushalayim, accept your rebuke. Listen, pen teka nafshi mimech, lest my I come to literally means remove my soul, or lest I come to hate you, right? Or not, pen asimech shimama, and then lest I completely destroy you, eretz lo noshava, and create you and turn you into a land that is not inhabited, that has no one residing there. This is really demonstrates that no matter what, there's constant prediction of destruction, but there's always a verse. There's always a place where God and or the prophet together come back and say, but there still is hope. You can still turn this around. Listen to what I'm telling you, you can still turn this around. There's never, no matter how desperate, no matter how awful the predictions of destruction are, there's always a chance. There's always a way to turn this around. There's always a way to listen. You don't have to take the steps of being ready for an inevitable war, but rather you can listen to this warning, heed it, and change your ways. Ko Amar Adonai Tzavos, back to the destruction in verse 9. So says God. The prophet tells us the words of God are as follows: Olel Ye'olelu Chagefen She'eres Yisrael. They are going to pluck the grapes in the way the olelos are the remaining grapes. After the first harvest, they go back and harvest more. They go back and check and see what's left, what's hanging. The remnants of Israel, they were constantly they're going to destroy, and then they're going to go back and see what grapes are left and take those, and they're going to go back and do it again. Hashev yadcha, pass your hand again, kivotzer al salsilos, in the same way that a harvester is constantly goes back and checks if he left any grapes to see what the remaining grapes are. Rashi points out that we see how the exile from Jerusalem came in waves. First they exiled one king, and then another king, and then they got the remnants, and then the remnants of that. There was constant one destruction after another. Al mi adaberav aida. Here it is now the prophet saying. The prophet is trying to avert this decree. He's desperately trying to avert this decree. He doesn't want this destruction to happen. So he's looking again. To whom can I talk to? To whom can I testify? To whom can I say, this is what God is saying, v'yishmo, and they will listen to me? Hine arela aznam. Their ears are stuffed. Their ears are clogged. They won't listen. They're not able anymore. They're so stubborn in their ways that they can't listen anymore. The words of God are words of shame to them. They're not interested in listening to the words of God. And once you get to the point where people make fun, people are just not interested in listening, it's almost impossible to get them to get the message. They just can't get the message no matter how many times you tell them. The anger of God, I'm full of it. I'm exhausted from trying to handle and all of this. I can't handle it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Shifoch, go ahead, pour your anger alolol bachutz, even on the young people on the outside of Yal Sod Bachurim Yachtov, and on all of the youths that hang around on the street corners, and wasting time. Go ahead, pour out your wrath. Kigam ish im isha yilachedu. Men and women will all be trapped in this terrible destruction. Im milei yamim, even zakein im milei yamin, even the elderly, along with the youth, everyone, the whole crew, every single one, they're all corrupt. I can't find anyone that's going to listen to my message. V'nasabu voteim la'acherim. In the end, their homes are going to end up being given to others, to the conquerors. Sados v'noshim yachtav, the fields and the women will be taken away by the others. Ki ates yodi al yoshvei haaretz no'am Adonai, because God says that God, I am going to stretch my hand out in anger against those that reside in the land. Ki miktanam bi'ad gedolam, because from the youngest to the oldest, kulo botzei abatza, they all are in it for greed alone. That's all they're interested in, for just greed and profit and no interest in others. Uminavi viad, because all that matters is money. Uminavi viad kohen, and from their false prophets and their priests, they're all kulo oseshaka, they're all full of falsehood. Again, Yirmiyahu reminds us what the bottom line is. And those leaders, those supposed leaders, instead of listening to the word of God, vayirapu eshever al mi al nikala, this disaster that's befallen my nation, that they became so corrupt, they heal it. They give it healing with ease, with nothing. They say it's nothing. Lamar, all they say, shalom, shalom, everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry. Keep doing your bad stuff. Keep living the corrupt life that you're living. But, however, v'ein shalom, there is no peace. They have it all wrong. It's a terrible, terrible mess. Hovishu, they have done something so horribly embarrassing, ki to'eva asu, because what they have done is so disgusting, to the extent that gam bosh lo yavoshu, they're not even embarrassed about what they've done. Gam hachlim lo yado, they don't even know shame. They don't know embarrassment. They're not embarrassed at all. They're proud of what they do. This is why, in such a case, they can't listen. That's why their ears are stuck. They're so arrogant, and they're so convinced that they're fine and that everything is okay. They'll never get the message and turn around. Therefore, the Yiplu Banoflim, they are going to fall among those that fall. The Eis Pikatim, at the time that I remember them for punishment, Yikashlu, that's when they will trip up. Amar Adonai, so says God. Thank you so much for listening to 6a. Looking forward to studying 6b and completing chapter 6 together. Unfortunately, this one can remind us so much of things we see where people become so arrogant and so narcissistic and so much believe in themselves that they are unwilling to even be embarrassed or ashamed for the bad that they've done. Let us hope that we can see some redemption.